Guys, and welcome back to another episode of Fit and Focus for remote work and digital nomads and just self-starting people. This podcast is produced by me, Shurina, certified nutritionist, health, nutrition, performance coach. I actually help people, guys, to get into flow states, learn how to do it consistently, on demand, and stay there longer. So if you are curious, book our call using the link in the show notes. Today, guys, yesterday we talked about burnout and how it actually your survival toolkit or your brain's survival toolkit. Burnout helps you to go after your goals long term. It's kind of like your what is it? I'm trying to compare it to a computer, like crash and burn system. Like instead of your computer, you're working in the middle of your work and it just crashes and tells you, sorry, I'm done. And you need to get a new computer, not in this way, but like some mistake error, and it just shuts down and never turns back on, and you lose all of your data and it dies, right? We actually have the break or burnout or crash and burn prevention system in our brain, so to speak. And we call it burnout because burnout is basically your brain trying to protect you from overexerting your mental and physical resources. So when you burn out, it's just a signal. Chill out, take a few days or maybe even a few weeks, depending on how bad it is, off, and then you're going to be good again. Sometimes, of course, it requires a little bit more complicated things health-wise. Maybe something is wrong with hormones or on more metabolic cellular level, and that might require a little bit more of a tweaking and figuring things out than just resting. But for most of the people, burnout is a simple thing of not managing your resources, your mental, physical, your energy resource. And the brain senses that and downregulates all of your receptors, all of your dopamine, and you basically don't feel motivated to do anything, to get out there, to explore, to meet people. You're not feeling motivated to do anything that potentially can make you exert more energy. And that's what burnout is all about. And we're going to talk more about that on the episode of Wednesday on the psychological side of things and how you can, for example, avoid things that overwhelm your mind. That is one of the causes of burnout. Today, I wanted to talk to you about food. Yes, food can actually contribute to your burnout, specifically to the levels of dopamine. Like, for example, eating a lot of processed carbohydrates in the form of added sugars, all kind of sweeteners, even if they're natural, like maybe honey or agave. Consuming the diet that contains a lot of white flour things like white pasta, white bread, pastries, and just consuming it in bigger amounts than your body, your metabolism can handle. All of that gives you a boost of dopamine, just like, playing video games would give you, or sex, probably not at that amount, depending on the amount of that white flour and the sugars you eat, of course. But you're going to get that spike of dopamine, that high stimulation. But then your dopamine receptors, when you do that consistently, get overstimulated. And because they can literally burn out, your brain downregulates that again. But if you keep pushing, you're going to contribute to the same burnout. Because again, your burnout happens because one of the reasons is you burn out your dopamine receptors with overstimulating them or being constantly in the go mode. And also maybe engaging in activities that stimulate your dopamine that you consider to be your rest or your off time, like playing video games or having sex or some drugs that stimulate dopamine, or going to some loud parties. A lot of things can overstimulate your dopamine. Also, things like smoking, right? Even bigger amounts of caffeine. More people are more or less sensitive to dopamine and how your brain reacts to that. Obviously amount matters. That can also contribute to overstimulating the dopamine and contributing to your burnout. And so a lot of people ask me when I start working with them or just friends, like, what do you do to not overstimulate your dopamine? What kind of foods should you eat instead? Let's say if you are used to eating a lot of sugary cereals or pastries and white bread kind of stuff, what to do? Like, should you just quit cold turkey? Well, in ideal scenario, yes. Like, quitting cold turkey, fasting, by the way, is great for restoring your dopamine level. So if you decide to restore your dopamine really fast, just do nothing, fast, and that will do it. But it's gonna suck, and most probably, if you are working on something or with other people, you're not gonna be a super nice person to be around. Your energy gonna be all over the place, and you're not gonna feel all that energized, of course, especially if you're fasting. So it's not actually suitable for life for most people. What you can do instead is substitute. Let's say you've been eating a lot of processed sugar. Substitute that with things like fruit, not fruit juice, because it's still a very highly concentrated source of sugar, even though very natural. It's still a source of sugar without fiber that gives you that dopamine boost instead of just gradually stimulating it a little bit, right? So chew your fruit, don't drink them. That's the point. It's still a processed carbohydrate. In our culture, for some reason, processed carbohydrates, people think it's just snacks, like, something you would find in a package, something with added sugars, some pastry. But fruit juice is also processed carbohydrate. Non-processed carbohydrate comes in whole foods, the ones that you need to chew. Even your smoothie is a processed carbohydrate. So if you drink a lot of fruit smoothies, that's also a little bit too much. Chew your fruit, right? So that's the best transition food. Just go for whole foods, go for longer carbohydrates like beans and lentils that will help you to maintain a certain level of blood sugar and with that dopamine, but will not overstimulate your dopamine system. Eating saturated fat, and it doesn't matter whether that's natural. Well, it does matter, like what quality of foods you eat in general. But for your dopamine receptors, saturated fat is actually not a friend. The more saturated fat you eat, the more downregulated, or not downregulated, but less sensitive your dopamine receptors are. I have a few friends who either used to smoke or take drugs, and their dopamine system is out of balance because of that. They require usually some sort of natural stimulation like exercise or maybe eating more natural sugars to keep that system going, because it just they destroyed a lot of their dopamine receptors in one way or the other, overstimulating them with drugs, right? So they find more often than not that they cannot be on, for example, high-fat diet at all. In fact, they kind of hate meals with a lot of fat naturally. And from the research that we have, it does seem that for your dopamine system, sensitivity of your dopamine system, saturated fat, whether that comes from, let's say, animal products like dairy or eggs or meats or fish, or whether that comes from things like palm oil or coconuts or Brazil nuts, saturated fat is in a lot of plants. It's still kind of the same story. So if you are struggling with burnout and you don't feel that motivated and excited about life, and it's hard for you to get going, so you might lower the amount of specifically saturated fat in your diet. Not so much things like olive oil or omega-3 fatty acids or fatty fish like salmon or sardines, even though they also contain some saturated fat. But go on a lower fat side, especially with saturated fat. That would be a very smart thing to do. So again, a lot of processed sugars, a lot of saturated fats might contribute to your burnout and in general feeling not excited, not motivated about things in life, about your work, about your relationships. And yesterday I wrote a blog about burnout and how it works, why it happens, and what to do about it. Like anti-burnout system put in simple daily rituals of recovery that you need to do to prevent that burnout in the first place. So the blog is in the show notes, and it's called something like how burnout is your lifesaver and all about BS work-life boundaries. So in this blog, I also wrote about how metaphorical work-life balance, it doesn't work. It has to be connected to more physical structures like the length of our day. And I explain more in the blog, so please check it out. It's fun, short read as usual, and there is always a very practical, simple recipe for you to prevent that burnout, right? So check out that in the show notes. But continuing our conversation about nutrition and burnout, so processed foods, saturated fats, lots of sugar will contribute to your burnout and in general increase your inflammation levels, decrease your metabolic health, increase your stress levels. So all of that gonna contribute even more to your burnout. Now, let me give you a couple of pieces of advice that is very practical and usable for a lot of people going through burnout or just wanting to not contribute it as much on a daily basis. A lot of you might be sensitive to caffeine, and you notice that, for example, drinking coffee might make you feel more anxious and almost stressed. So not necessarily a good way, to boost your alertness and wakefulness. So what you can actually do instead is go for green tea. Green tea also contains caffeine, but it also has other substances like L-theanine that promotes wakefulness and stimulates dopamine, but in a different way. It stimulates other things too, like GABA, that makes you feel relaxed. So it's gonna, you're more awake, alert, but you're not stressed and anxious. And that kind of caffeine actually can boost your dopamine again in that gentle way. Plus the amount of caffeine and the kind is different in green tea. So instead of coffee, go for green tea. Instead of, again, processed carbohydrates, go for carbohydrates that you need to chew. Fruit, berries are obvious ones, but also just carbohydrates with more fiber, like beans and lentils, but also tubers like sweet potatoes. They are great sources of natural sugars that don't overload your dopamine system. What else? I also wanted to mention a few foods that might naturally help your brain with boost of dopamine, but a gentle one, right? So if you are struggling with not being so motivated, and it might not be exactly burnout, but you feel like during your working hours, during your day, you might use a little bit of that motivation to make you go after more important goals and projects, feel more confident and more excited and just, a little bit more pushy maybe for those goals. There are foods that can gently stimulate your dopamine, helping you to accomplish more, but not push yourself into burnout. So some of the most popular foods contain this precursor or building block of dopamine. And let me list you a few of those simple foods. I already mentioned, by the way, that intermittent fasting actually makes your dopamine receptors more sensitive. So over long term, it helps you to use that dopamine in your brain better, more effectively, and that helps you to stay motivated. But at the same time, it doesn't push you into burnout, right? So intermittent fasting, when done right, not too much, some people overdo it and that pushes them into more stressed mode. So when done right, especially women, be a little bit more careful. It can help you with dopamine and feeling more motivated, but also not getting into burnout. So other foods that help because they contain L-tyrosine, this building block of dopamine. Here, a special place is for animal products with protein, animal protein, animal protein contains more of that building block. All the plant foods that I'm going to enlist after, they're distant cousins. Now, they contain some, but again, they're distant cousins, very distant usually. So animal products, especially lean, because again, we talked about saturated fat, how that actually decreases sensitivity of your dopamine receptors. So you want to go for lean chicken, poultry in general, lean fish. Here you want to think about white fish, lean cut of meat, lean cut of poultry, egg whites, obviously. So maybe, a couple of egg yolks if you like your eggs, and then more whites. So animal products, lean animal protein, really amazing for dopamine, to build that dopamine. Then we have a lot of plant foods, things like apples, avocados, bananas, beans, beets, chocolate, green leafy vegetables, those things like spinach, for example, nuts, oats, olive oil, oregano, peanuts, rosemary, sesame and pumpkin seeds, turmeric, and curry spices. Again, animal protein, lean animal protein. And then we have things like apples, avocados, bananas, beans, beets, chocolate. Chocolate is my favorite. Boosts all of the feel good brain chemicals, but don't overdo it and go for a really dark one. I use 100%. Green leafy vegetables, nuts, oats, olive oil, oregano, peanuts, rosemary, all these Italian herbs, seed vegetables, sesame and pumpkin seeds. Sprinkle those on your salads and in your cooking. Soy products if you tolerate soy, turmeric, watermelon, and wheat. If you do go for wheat, go for whole grain and make sure you are, tolerate it well. Another special place we're gonna give to fava beans, that they also called broad beans. Maybe they have also other names, but fava beans, they actually contain the best precursor, L-DOPA, that crosses blood-brain barrier directly and is the fastest way to make dopamine. L-DOPA, that's why it's called L-DOPA, right? It's actually even made into supplements. So the best dopamine booster. So if you need a little bit of natural, gentle boost to your dopamine and motivation, maybe if you're already burning out but still need to get things done before getting into chill mode, then eating fava beans, broad beans with L-DOPA might just be the thing. Also eating things like yogurt, kefir, other fermented foods like sauerkraut and kimchi also will help with naturally good balanced dopamine levels. And that's about it. Today we talked about burnout, guys, and how some foods can contribute to that burnout. Foods with processed carbohydrates, with saturated fats, or even caffeine. So you might choose the source of your caffeine. We also talked about foods that contain building blocks of dopamine that might help you with your dopamine levels in general, your excitement about life, your motivation. Maybe your dopamine system is down-regulated or not that sensitive for one reason or the other. Like maybe you did use some substances or behaviors that abused your dopamine system, and that might be very similar to burnout, might feel very similar, but not be caused by you not taking breaks or rest. If you do have a suspicion that you might not be recovering all that well, maybe you don't have time without social media in the morning or at night or in the middle of the day, maybe you just go and never have those moments in your day when you just take time off and stare into the abyss of ceiling or sky in front of you. Maybe if you don't meditate or don't have any mindfulness practices, maybe you don't sleep enough. That is a huge contributor to burnout. So in the blog, in the show notes, a very short one, and it's how burnout is your lifesaver and all the BS about work-life boundaries, and how to actually set the boundaries that make sense in our physical reality. So check out my blog. There is a very simple recipe for anti-burnout recovery protocol that you do daily and some things you do weekly. So when you do this protocol every day, the effect of that going to be that you won't need a vacation to just do nothing. You won't feel like you need a vacation. You'd want a vacation to go explore, try new things, explore new cultures, visit new places. You'd want to do that, or maybe go and climb that mountain. You'll have energy on your vacation, right? There's a difference between needing a vacation and wanting a vacation to do something interesting and explorative. And so when you use this simple anti-burnout protocol daily and weekly, there are a few things that you do daily and weekly. You won't need a vacation. You will want the vacation that you will enjoy doing something exciting. And that's going to be the difference. You will be able to go long-term after your goals, after your projects, without burning out, without feeling cynical and like the whole world is on your case. That's also what happens during burnout. You're going to feel energized, excited, no matter how long you need to go after your goals and pursue either relationship or a business goal, or financial goal, whatever that might be. You'll be a marathoner who doesn't burn out. And again, you want a vacation to do something exciting, not to do nothing because they're so freaking burned out you can't even plan a vacation. It's like too much work, right? So check out the blog in the show notes, schedule our call if you need help. If you need a help of someone who spent the last decade of their life working with highly productive people who go through these moments of burnout and being overwhelmed quite often until they learn how to avoid that, how to manage their life better, right? So schedule that call, check out that blog. Those are 2 action steps for you to take advantage of to take care of yourself. And again, so you'll want a vacation. You won't need it because you're so freaking burnt out. And thank you guys for listening. Thank you for tuning in. Get after it. Get after your goals. And if you feel like you need some rest, take it, guys. Take it. It will give you your life, your excitement about your life back. And as usual, till next time, eat better daily.